Zoe Miller pretends to be Zoe Wallace when Zach McLaren gets amnesia and mistakes her for his girlfriend. She wants to come clean, but gets a change of heart when she meets Zach's cousin, Miles. During a Valentine's Day special history class, Becca has a romantic story up her sleeve. She takes her fellow students back to Rome in 270 AD when people were refusing to join the army since they didn't want to leave their wives. According to her, the emperor banned marriages because of this, but Saint Valentine helped people marry in secret. He was arrested but fell in love with the prison guard's blind daughter. And when he touched her eyes, she could finally see for the first time on February 14th. Everyone loves Becca's story, except Zoe Miller, who seems frustrated by the historical inaccuracy. She chooses to stick to the facts since there were multiple Saint Valentines during the time, none of whom cured a girl's blindness. Becca feels the story could have happened, but this helps Zoe point out how Valentine's Day is just a farce. She doesn't believe in the concept of love and thinks of it as a product of capitalism. She prefers compatibility instead, which is why she decides to pitch an app she has created. She's trying to promote data-driven compatibility and throws in some divorce stats to sound convincing. But no one wants to invest in her app, and when her best friend, Elle, also gets a rose-infused matcha latte for her on Valentine's Day, Zoe wants to cancel the day. Elle doesn't care for her excuses and has planned a rom-com binge session for the night. She's a poet but doesn't want to show Zoe her work, since she keeps finding faults. Becca turns up with her friend Francesca, and they call her a loser for trying to shame Becca for loving Valentine's Day. When they leave, Zoe gets hit on the head by soccer star Zach McLaren's ball. He comes over to apologize and even offers to take her to the health center. Elle can't get over the fact that she just spoke to the hottest guy in their college, who also seemed to be flirting with her. While Elle is lusting over him, Zoe reminds her that she surely has no compatibility with a guy like Zach. Zoe is late for a lecture where the professor asks the attendees to also focus on their social life when they pick a graduate school. Zoe asks about her greatest accomplishment, which for her is winning the Turing Award and raising her children. There's another question asking about her opinions as a scientist about romantic love. While the professor believes in the power of real romantic love, the student clearly disagrees and quotes the approach of the philosopher Alain de Botton, who thinks of love as a modern-day invention and as a product of capitalism, which is exactly what Zoe thinks too. She is impressed with this guy and tries to talk to him, but he disappears. That night, Elle seems like she'll fall short of tissues to cry into, but there's not a single reaction from Zoe about the rom-com. Elle knows the whole world cries at this scene, but Zoe seems to be immune to its charm. She thinks all these movies have the same formula about some big romantic gesture to fix a problem. Zoe's mom, Paula, is also watching rom-coms that night and doesn't know how Zoe is her daughter. She is worried about her mother being lonely and wants her to find some sort of compatibility, since her divorce was very messy. Zoe also discusses the guy from the lecture who quoted her favorite philosopher, and seemed very interesting. Elle is just excited about a possible tech nerd match for her, but she doesn't know if she'll ever see him again. She also works at a bookstore and notices Zach entering. She teases him about hitting someone else in the head, but directs him towards the different sections. He can't find the book he wants on a video game called Battletoads, so she offers to order it for him and gives him two choices. He pays for it with his credit card, but while processing the order, Zoe informs him about video games being the leading cause of divorce according to an actuary chart listing. When she indirectly calls him ignorant, he calls her a know-it-all before leaving the store. Since his credit card is still in her hand, she runs after him while he's riding his bike to give it back. When he finally hears her calling out to him and looks back, he gets hit by a car and falls. Zoe feels horrible and rushes to check if he's breathing. The driver of the car is also apologetic and calls the ambulance for him. Zoe tries to pinch his nose, and when Zach responds, she sighs in relief. He can see a blurred version of her when she informs him about the accident. She speaks to the ambulance operator and gives them her name. When Zach hears Zoe, he is instantly relieved and tries to hug and kiss her. She doesn't understand why he's being so friendly and asks him to wait for help. Zach's parents, Connie and Matt McLaren, arrive at the hospital and learn that he got a concussion, so he doesn't remember most things prior to the accident. The doctor thinks his amnesia is most likely temporary. Zoe gives them Zach's broken phone, and when she introduces herself, his parents seem relieved that his girlfriend was there for him. While Zach seems embarrassed, Zoe is very confused and tries her best to clarify that she's not with Zach. The doctor thinks he can go home, but he strictly needs a stress-free routine to get his memory back. His parents ask Zoe to join them for dinner, but she makes an excuse about confirming with her roommate first. Elle is babysitting when Zoe calls her and fills her in on what happened. She learns that Zach has a girlfriend called Zoe Wallace, who also coincidentally looks a lot like her, and is the captain of the women's soccer team. While she's still on the phone, Zach's doctor asks her to make sure nothing happens that upsets Zach, or it could worsen his condition. Zoe is confused about what she should do and decides to tell his parents the truth at dinner. The other Zoe Wallace is on a trip to the Bahamas with her family and is getting anxious about Zach not replying to her since the morning. She's afraid he's ghosting her and has even assumed he might have met someone else. Zoe comments on how nice Zach's parents' house is, but he feels something is off. She tries to jog his memory by asking if he remembers hitting someone with a ball, but Zach just remembers how much he wants to kiss his girlfriend. She asks him to take things slow and his sister Avery jumps out of nowhere. Avery pretends her name is Amanda just to mess with Zach, and asks if he wants to play on the Xbox with her. Zach isn't allowed screen time, so she teases him about playing Battletoads alone. Zach suddenly remembers someone told him video games lead to divorce, but he can't recall who. Zoe tries to talk to his parents, and since Connie knows Zoe was supposed to be in the Bahamas, she tries to confess about her real identity. But she gets distracted when the same guy from her lecture turns up there. She finds out that he is Zach's cousin Miles, who is in grad school at MIT. Miles is worried about how irresponsible Zach was for getting a concussion. His appearance makes Zoe forget about her original plan of telling the truth, and she decides to keep pretending to be Zoe Wallace. When Zach's parents ask her about what kind of a doctor her dad is or her soccer training, she ends up giving very vague answers. She changes the topic to something she's interested in and declares that she's thinking about going to MIT for computer science. Miles is surprised to know coding is her major. Even Zach doesn't remember this detail about her. She manages to get away with this since Zach's father is happy she has multiple interests. Miles is studying applied machine learning, which makes him seem even more interesting. After dinner, Miles and Zoe happen to know all the correct answers to crossword puzzles. But Miles needs to leave for the night. Connie invites Zoe to a ski trip that weekend, so she heads out insisting that she needs to ask her mom for permission. She discusses the situation with Elle and confesses she hasn't told them the truth yet. Elle thinks it's fate since there's no probability of a guy she likes being related to the guy she's pretending to date. Zoe feels guilty about causing his accident and now trying to flirt with an amnesia patient's cousin. Elle still thinks she should continue pretending to be Zoe Wallace since she needs to stay with Zach till he heals, and this trip will also help bring her closer to Miles. Since Miles is only there for that weekend, Zoe knows she can't miss her chance. Paula is sad she won't visit her, but is glad Zoe has made new friends. Zoe is facing a huge dilemma about which book to pack, and Miles is impressed, but Elle thinks packing a bathing suit instead for the hot tub is more important. Zoe starts thinking about the real Zoe Wallace and how worried she might be about Zach. Zoe Wallace is now even more paranoid and is stalking the girls Zach follows on social media. She feels like Zach is either deceased or has dumped her, and wants to cut her trip short to check on him. On the road, Zach tries to hold Zoe's hand, but she doesn't let him. She suggests they can play the license plate game by adding the value of the numbers till they get a prime number. Avery is sure that's very boring, but Miles' interest is all the encouragement she needs. They reach the rental where Connie asks Avery and Zoe to share a room. They decide to go snowboarding for the rest of the day while Zach gets his rest. Zoe has no idea how to snowboard, even if Miles thinks it's like riding a bike. She gives Zach a book about female spies to keep him company when he's alone. They're ready to start, but it seems weird that a soccer player like her is struggling so much with her snowboarding gear. She tries to move ahead but can't make it too far, and Miles has to catch her. He tells the rest of them to go ahead while he helps Zoe figure this out. He starts training her by giving her tips and teaches her how to place her weight. She's terrible at it and keeps falling, but Miles is always there to help her out. By the end of it, she gets it but falls on Miles. Hiding in her room, Zoe discusses the day with Elle and feels that Miles was very sweet to her. Since Zach's memory can come back anytime, Elle thinks Zoe needs to take her chance and use the hot tub to flirt with Miles. She doesn't feel too good about it, but Elle reminds her how all great love stories begin with a love triangle. Elle's food order is there, along with a handsome delivery guy who has just moved there from Chile and is trying to learn English. Elle shares that she's babysitting but is a writer, and he seems interested in that. But he needs to leave for more deliveries, and Elle seems happy about meeting him. Avery wonders why hamburgers don't have ham, and Matt informs her about its origins in Hamburg. But when he shifts the topic to pizza, his kids know they're about to share the story of how they met, which everyone has heard except Zoe. They were separately backpacking abroad in Italy after college and trying to figure out their future when they bumped into each other and fell in love with their love for pizza. Zoe thinks they're very compatible, which is why they work out so well. Zach also thinks he loves pizza but is confused about everything these days because of his memory. Elle calls the place she ordered from and claims to have not received rice with her order. She wants the same delivery guy to come back again. Zoe is very fascinated by Miles while he's working, but Zach comes out of somewhere and asks her to watch a movie with him. When he suggests Pretty Woman, she hates how it's about the character just wanting to bag the rich guy, and Miles thinks there's a lot of unrealistic portrayal of sex work. Zach is surprised since he knows it's one of Zoe's favorite movies but suggests Say Anything instead. Miles and Zoe again have a problem with its portrayal of grand romantic gestures. When he tries to make another suggestion, he's reminded that he isn't allowed screen time. But dumb charades is still allowed, and Avery guesses the first film her dad enacts. It's Zoe's turn to act, and she tries to make Zach and Miles guess the TV show. She does a few random gestures, but Miles finally guesses Seinfeld correctly. He explains that Zoe made a sine wave, which helped him guess that. Zach pretends he understood it too, but it's late and he needs to rest. After he goes, Zoe suggests she was thinking about a soak in the hot tub, and Avery offers to join her. The delivery guy is back again and apologizes for not getting the rice before. Elle shows him she already had it, and he knows why she called her again. He enters and kisses her, and introduces himself as Diego. In the hot tub, Avery wants to know how Zach and Zoe met, and seems confused since her version is different from Zach's. Miles comes to her rescue and asks Avery to grab some stuff for s'mores. When she's gone, he insists he wants a soak too, and Zoe can't get her eyes off him. She nervously tries to make conversation and asks him about life at MIT. He thinks she should apply because she's very smart and funny, and he likes spending time with her. He asks if she and Zach are exclusive because he doesn't think they're a good match. Zoe is eager to point out how new their relationship is, and seems thrilled to know that Miles feels they're more compatible. They get a lot closer and she kisses him, and everything seems to be in sync, till they're interrupted by Avery. The next morning, when Zoe asks about everyone, she learns that Miles is probably talking to his girlfriend Emily. Zoe tries to hide her shock and makes an excuse about getting her jacket. On her way, she meets Miles and asks him about his girlfriend and their kiss. He claims Emily doesn't care since they're polyamorous, but Zoe cares that he's being so casual about it, especially since he said they're in sync. He only meant they're compatible for a hookup and he didn't think about dating her. He also doesn't understand why she's judging him when she's also dating his cousin. In her frustration, she admits she's not dating Zach, but claims that it's complicated. Zoe is sulking on the couch when Zach finds her. Connie wants everyone to enjoy the beautiful day, but Zach can't go out, and Zoe also makes an excuse about having a bruise. Connie is happy Zach will have some company, and when Miles confirms if she's coming, Zoe ignores him. Zoe and Zach decide to make it a game day and start with chess. It's Zach's first time, so she teaches him everything in detail, and he learns it by comparing it to soccer. He barely survives as she aggressively makes moves against him, and they discuss what's important in a relationship. He simply thinks it works if two people like each other, just like his parents. After strategizing, he makes his move and is surprised to learn he managed to tie with her. They move on to Jenga, Monopoly, and any other games they can think of. While playing paper football, she gets a tape measure and makes some calculations to understand what kind of force she needs, and wins. He knows her brain will take her far, and he's impressed she has a whole career path set out for her. She thinks Zach has soccer too, but he has realized he's not good at anything else and is scared about what he'll do after he graduates. She reminds him about how quickly he learned chess and knows that he can be good at anything. Among his other interests are making breakfast pizza. It also has eggs and bacon, and he's very excited to let Zoe try it. After one big bite, she can't believe how good it tastes, or that he took cooking classes to learn this. He thinks her being impressed with this is the nicest thing she's said to him all weekend. He claims he's enjoying getting to know her again. He introduces her to Battletoads while he reads the book. He started playing it to connect with Avery and even tells her about a book he ordered on it. Distracted by the game, Zoe forgets she's pretending to be someone else and claims to know about the book. This confuses Zach, but she changes the topic. She asks him about the book she gave him, and he has grown to love learning everything about women codebreakers in Germany. He thinks what the women accomplished is impressive, and feels like Zoe could easily have been one of them. His parents are back and Avery notices them playing Battletoads. She has left her gloves at the lodge and Zoe offers to help her get them back. Zach and Zoe take Avery to the lodge, but Zoe gets distracted by the snow and starts throwing snowballs at him. He throws them at her too, but when Avery shouts out at them that she found her gloves, Zoe gets distracted and Zach's snowball hits her in the head. He comes to check on her and kisses her while apologizing. He thinks it may leave a mark, which is exactly what he said to her before his amnesia when he hit her with the football. He gets a flashback of that incident, but doesn't completely understand it. She tries to tell him the truth, but Avery calls out to them again. Back in her room, she discusses everything with Elle, who also thinks Zoe shouldn't be okay with being a second choice to Miles. Zoe is more confused now, since she liked spending time with Zach and it somehow feels right to her. Elle warns her against telling the truth, since the whole point of Zoe pretending to be his girlfriend is to make sure Zach recovers. She feels happy at dinner with him and even lets him lie down on her lap. He's feeling tired and needs to rest, and Zoe thanks him for that day, since it surpassed her expectations. She thinks he's full of surprises and Zach thinks the same of her, except he calls her Zoe Wallace, which instantly makes her realize she is living a lie. He notices the changes in her expression, but she just hopes when his memory is back, he will remember this day and still want to hang out with her. As they head back from the trip, Zoe is happy holding Zach's hand. When they arrive, Avery wants to play Battletoads with her and even Connie invites her for dinner. She is planning to stay, but when Zach brings out her suitcase, he notices the name Zoe Miller and doesn't understand why it says that. Right then, the real Zoe Wallace also turns up outside his house and announces that she's Zach's girlfriend. When Zach looks at her, he gets flashbacks and realizes that Zoe Wallace is his real girlfriend, and Zoe Miller is the one he hit with the ball. No one else understands, so Zoe starts explaining what happened. This time, she tells the whole truth to all of them. Zach is offended Miles kissed his girlfriend, but Zoe explains that she doesn't like Miles anymore. She feels like she has a connection with Zach, but since she has lied to them, he doesn't know what to believe. She decides to leave and Zoe Wallace comes over to hug Zach and is concerned about him hitting his head. Avery is upset with this reunion because she likes the other Zoe better. When Zoe comes back home, she starts ranting about how stupid it was of her to go ahead with that plan. Elle tries to calm her down, but Zoe blames her for everything that happened. She doesn't understand that Elle wanted her to experience love, so she continues to insult Elle for not knowing anything about love herself and writing stupid poems. Elle knows she has crossed a line and shares that she's seeing someone. Back in class, everyone is gossiping about Zoe and how she conned Zach's family. Some rumors get exaggerated, and when she hears she's pregnant with Miles' baby, she shouts out in frustration. Someone records her, but Zoe is done with the judgment and storms out. In her house, she tosses and turns and is all alone, and seems frustrated with everything. Even Elle won't talk to her and chooses to ignore her, and she realizes her app is a failure. This leads Zoe to her mom's door, and they discuss what happened with her. Paula wants Zoe to know that relationships are about much more than compatibility. She also clarifies that she didn't get a divorce from her dad because they were different, but because they didn't know any life other than each other since they've been high school sweethearts. They just wanted to explore their individual identities. She also wants Zoe to experience a real relationship and learn how to be vulnerable and not so calculative. Paula also suggests that her app needs a pivot, which is something she learned from Zoe, and knows her daughter will take over the world as a tech genius. She also thinks Zoe needs to tell Zach how she feels about him. When Zoe is back, Elle is still pissed with her. She's working on a short story about feeling stabbed in the back. Zoe agrees with it and starts reciting a poem she wrote for her. She hates poetry but is trying out a grand romantic gesture to win her best friend back. She asks for her forgiveness through the poem, and Elle is too impressed to control her emotions. They're friends again, and Zoe wants to know everything about the guy she is dating. As Zoe walks through the campus, Becca and Francesca stop her, and Becca tells her a story about how she did something similar in high school. She told everyone she was going on a date with Ryan Reynolds, which made her face a lot of criticism. But she's approaching Zoe because they're organizing a big party called the Jam Fest, and want her help to create an interactive website with live feeds. Zoe knows she can make it but doesn't want to, so Becca reminds her that doing this will help her get remembered for something better than her lies. Knowing that this might be her only chance at redemption, she agrees to do it. She starts working on building the website and even tests it with them. Right before finishing it, she looks at Zach's photo and smiles, and when the website is finally live and done, she wants to celebrate her victory, but no one is around. Elle wakes Zoe up after she has pulled an all-nighter, and she wants her to come to the Jam Fest with her and Diego. Zoe just wants to sit at home and watch it from the laptop, and despite Elle's many enthusiastic attempts, she is determined to stay back. The party has started and everyone's having a great time, which Zoe watches from home. Elle and Diego ask her to come to the party, but her phone battery is dying and she needs to cut the call. She watches something else when Elle comes rushing into the house and shows her a video of Zoe Wallace with some other guy. She pretends to not care and doesn't want to try anything with Zach because she still feels they're not right for each other. Elle gives her an example of their friendship and makes her understand how, despite being complete opposites in everything, they love each other as best friends. She wants Zoe to stop making excuses and try to get the life she deserves. She turns up in her night suit to the Jam Fest and still thinks it's a bad idea, but Diego urges her to be brave. Zoe hurries towards the crowd and looks around, but she can't find Zach anywhere. She grabs a mic on the stage to make an announcement. She nervously introduces herself as people shout at her for killing their vibe. People start recording her as she asks for Zach and if someone has seen him. She only stops when Zach calls out to her from the crowd. When she approaches Zach, his friend makes fun of her for pretending to be his girlfriend. Zach sends him away, but Zoe feels like she deserves that. He teases her about her outfit and she explains that she wanted to be there before he had a chance to leave. She knows that she has always thought of relationships based on data but understands now that it's more about a feeling, just like what he had said earlier about liking someone. She confesses that she really likes him and apologizes for lying to him. Everyone knows that he has broken up with Zoe Wallace, but he tells her that he did it because she is the Zoe he wants to be with. She smiles and he takes her in his arms and kisses her. He's happy she made a grand romantic gesture, and everyone who looks at the feed, including Paula, are thrilled she is finally with the right guy. Zach and Zoe are happy with each other and even continue to play chess, in which Zach defeats her. She demands a rematch.